Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this introduction to ACT Online Prep Live with the ACT and Kaplan. Let me just say, we did start a little bit later than anticipated this evening, so thank you for your patience, and also I've got to give a proper shout out to Chris and Greg on our digital technology team for fixing some crazy issues and make sure that we could actually get running this evening. Now, my name is Boris, and I'll be your on-camera teacher for the next, 40 minutes, 50 minutes or so. But if you've ever been to any of our sessions before, you know that I am not the only teacher here. In fact, we've got a veritable crew of fantastic ACT instructors working behind the scenes. You've already seen them in the chat to help make sure that your questions get answered and you have a phenomenal experience. So those are David and Greg and Heather and Joe and Arthur are all here to help make sure you have a fantastic time. Now, let me just say a few quick technical things before we get started here, and then we'll get right to cracking. Our goal in tonight's session will be to review very briefly all 4 sections of the ACT so you can get a sense of what instruction with the Online Prep Live program is like for all the different ACT tests. Now, while you take a look at these learning objectives, let me just say that our chat is a moderated chat this evening, which means that my fellow teachers behind the scenes will be reviewing the chats that come in and pushing through the ones that are good and, not pushing through the ones that say naughty words and do other bad stuff. So when you chat, we see everything that you say, but you're not necessarily going to see everything that you say appear in the chat box. Even if you say something totally normal and not at all bad, you might not see it in case there's like a whole bunch of people chatting at that moment, and we don't, necessarily want to put through 562 people who all said yes. We'll let a few yeses through to get the idea of what's happening, and then the rest of the chats will be cleared out. Now, the technology is working now, I believe. If, however, you're having any issues tonight, please go ahead and reload the page. That should fix any problems that you are having. And with that, why don't we just go ahead and get started here. So the very first test of the ACT is the English exam. This is always the first test. You're going to have exactly 45 minutes on this test to answer 75 questions spread out over 5 passages. Now, the TLDR here is that you've got 9 minutes on average per passage. This is usually not the scariest section of the ACT for folks. This is usually not the one where people struggle with timing the most. So if this is a section that you struggle with, that's actually good news, because it is one that with a little bit of practice, you can go a long way. And if it's a section that you feel confident about, this is a really good one to go to and practice when you get tired or demotivated or discouraged practicing one of those sections that you do have a tougher time with. You can kind of use this as a sort of confidence bank. Now, of course, in one session, we cannot go over all of English, but I do want to review just a couple of things with you this evening, and then show you how our strategies work to really efficiently answer practice questions. The thing that we're going to do tonight as part of our sample class is commas. Now, let us know in the chat if you ever feel when you write papers for English class that you're just guessing about commas. I know at least a few of you out there are in that boat, because I was definitely in that boat in high school and frankly through most of college. I'd be like, this seems like a good time to put a comma. I don't know. We'll go with the wind say, yes, or no, or sit there for 30 seconds and flip a coin. And it's so frustrating. And not only is it frustrating when you're writing papers for school, but it's of course frustrating on the ACT when it's like you have to get it right or you don't get the question right. So one thing that I was really encouraged to figure out after I began prepping, I realized that actually there are just 4 things that commas are used for. 4. So if you can memorize those 4 things, you never have to guess about commas ever again. Not on the ACT, not in any of your high school writing, not in any of your college writing. Like it's one of those things that honestly has benefits beyond the test, because there is going to be a lot of writing you're going to have to do before you get your college degree, and not having to guess every time you write a comma is certainly handy. So here you go. All right, we're going to go through a checklist of 4 things, and then on test day, when you take this exam, you just ask yourself, does this situation match one of the 4 things that I know commas are for? If it does, put a comma there, or keep the comma if it is there. If it doesn't, then don't put a comma there. So here they go. Thing number 1, you use commas in lists. If you have 3 or more things in a list, you're going to use commas before or after all of the items in the list, except for, of course, after the last item. Thing number 2, You can use a comma and a conjunction to hold two complete sentences together. Thing number 3, you can use commas as a pair to add extra information into a sentence. So if you take a look at this example here, Azara found, much to her delight, that the hours she spent studying were worth the effort. Confirm, please, that indeed, if I were to block out that phrase and the commas that surround it, the sentence works. Azara found that the hours she spent studying were worth the effort. So when you have a situation like that where you just want to insert a little bit of unnecessary information into a sentence, you do that with commas. Okay, and then there's one more thing that commas can do. They can connect a phrase to a complete sentence. So commas are not strong enough on their own to hold two complete sentences together, but a comma is strong enough on its own to hold a phrase and a complete sentence together. Like in this example, after school is just a phrase, but Mindy has to go straight to band practice. That's a complete sentence, and a comma can hold those two together. So again, anytime you see a comma underlined on the ACT English exam, no more should you ever guess. Instead, you're going to remember these 4 different things the commas are for and mentally run down the checklist. Then you will be certain that you do or do not need to use a comma. So I'm going to show you how this works. Of course, you'll have to make some flashcards, memorize these things, practice it a few times to really have it branded to the inside of your brain. But when you work through the question with me, you'll see how it can go on the ACT after you have done that prep. All right, so I'm a student taking the test, and here's what I see. The greater the pressure from the wind causes bonds to form more quickly at the downward edge than in the rest of the snowflake. So here's what I'm doing on test day. I'm thinking, okay, I see a comma at the end of that underlined portion. So item number 1 of business, I got to decide if the comma actually needs to be there. So tell me please in the chat, did any of the 4 things that we said commas are used for appear in this situation? Do we see any lists, non-essential information, 2 sentences held together by a comma and a conjunction, or a phrase and a complete sentence held together? Do we see any of our 4 comma things in this situation? If you've done the practice, then when you see a question like this on your exam, you can confidently say, no, there's no lists. There's no conjunction, so there's no way this is a comma and a conjunction holding 2 complete sentences together. And frankly, neither what comes to the left of the comma nor what comes to the right of the comma is a complete sentence. Take a look at that and confirm that, yeah, what's to the left of it and to the right of it, neither of those things is a complete sentence. So that means that it's not a comma and a conjunction holding 2 complete sentences together, and it is not a phrase and a complete sentence being connected by a comma, because there's just no complete sentence anywhere. So we don't have the conjunction, we don't have the phrase and the complete sentence, we don't have a list, and we certainly don't have non-essential information, because to insert non-essential information into a sentence, you would need a pair of commas, not just 1. So on the ACT, you're like, okay, I know that there is no need for a comma at all in the situation. Eliminate every answer choice that has any commas in it, and wow, just like that, in seconds, you can circle choice D for domination and confidently move on with the ACT. All right, so that's how it works. That's the benefit of learning the commas, and you can now see how you can apply that knowledge to a practice question. Now, if you're like, oh, Boris, I want to see that stuff that you said about commas again, I didn't take a screenshot, I didn't, get it down in time. I just wanted to make a note that you can actually come back to the same URL that you're watching the stream from now, and you can see the recording of tonight's session. So it'll be up for a little while. So feel free, if you want to review any of this information, to come back tomorrow or some other time, and you'll be able to view the recording down below. All right, and by the way, many of you guys found the poll that you can tab over. So you can tab between the chat and the poll. Most of you who tabbed over to the poll, pick D. That's excellent. We're going to grab this choice, and we're going to move on. The other topic I want to mention briefly is subject-verb agreement. Now, in English, subject-verb agreement is really easy. So the test makers don't ask questions, that are like, which of these is it? Is it I am playing golf? Or is it I are playing golf? Is it you are playing golf or you is playing golf? Everybody knows how to conjugate verbs because English is a very simple language in that regard. So instead of questions that just ask you to make conjugations, which you're more likely to see are questions like this one, in which critical thinking is required, not just knowing what the conjugation is. Check out what happens here. According to geologists, a fossil fuel deposit of truly game-changing size, whether a giant pocket of natural gas trapped within a shale formation or an enormous reservoir of crude oil deep beneath the ocean waves, have become increasingly difficult to discover, if any even still exist. Okay, tell me please in the chat. We got an underlined verb, have. Now, what is the subject of this verb? What have become increasingly difficult to discover? Waves is the word that is closest to this verb. But you can observe that waves is actually part of a non-essential phrase that we can take out of the sentence. It's between two dashes, it's just adding some extra information. So this is the mistake that a lot of your competition will make. A lot of your fellow competitors on the ACT will say, all right, waves have become increasingly difficult to discover, no change needed, pick choice A, move on. But the author's not saying that waves have become increasingly difficult to discover. At last I checked, the oceans, the tides, moon coming, we still got waves. I think it's pretty easy to find a wave or two if you're near a beach. That's not the subject. The subject here is a deposit of truly game-changing size. So I'll just abbreviate that as a fossil fuel deposit. Now that's clearly singular. So as I see folks voting in the poll, you guys are picking the singular verb, which is choice C for champions. Champions. A fossil fuel deposit has become increasingly difficult to discover. Excellent work, folks, checking out this question, navigating the critical thinking, and picking the correct answer on test day. Very well done. Now, of course, there's a lot more English practice to do. So the idea tonight is to show you what instruction in the online prep live program is like. If you do, of course, sign up for the program, we go over all the different grammar topics and critical thinking topics that are assessed on the ACT exam, so you will be fully prepared. Similarly, we're not going to review all of math with you. That would be totally insane to do in one evening. We'll just check out a few math topics so you can just get a sense of what it's like to review the math you need for the ACT with the online prep live program. The math test is always second on the ACT. It's always 60 minutes long to answer 60 questions. This is the test that gives you the most time per question. You have on average 1 minute per question, though of course you'll do some questions very quickly and bank some time to take on some of the harder questions with, a minute and a half or even 2 minutes, as long as of course there were some questions earlier on that you got faster. One of the number one questions people have about math is, what math do I need to know? And fundamentally, what you need to know is Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and geometry. There's also a little bit of side topics, so trig appears a little bit. You got your stats and probability, things that you probably covered at some point in a side unit in geometry or Algebra 1 or Algebra 2. And if you didn't cover any of those things in class, of course, we review all the math content in the online prep live course. So let's do a little bit of math content review. We have a little review of quadratics here for you this evening, and then we'll see how we can apply some of this knowledge to an ACT question. So with quadratics, we'll review two things tonight. Number one is FOIL. This is probably a process you are very intimate with, first, outer, inner, last, and it is used to expand binomials. So you'll say that x plus 2 times x minus 3 is x squared minus x minus 6. Now the more interesting thing, and what I'm going to focus on this evening, is reverse FOIL, because you need this to solve quadratic equations. Say we got a situation like x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 0. Now it's not at all clear to me what x could be that would make that equation equal to 0. So I want to reverse FOIL the expression on the left to make it easier to see what values of x are good. And to do this, I need to look for two magic numbers. My two magic numbers should multiply to 6 and add to 5. In other words, I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to the number on the outside and add to the number in the middle. Now tell me please in the chat, if you'd be so kind, what are my two magic numbers for this particular quadratic? I saw Thor say in the chat, wow, this live stream was helpful. Thor, thank you so much for your kind words, and thank you for being here tonight. We really appreciate you all coming here this evening and giving us some of your time. So here, the two magic numbers are 3 and 2. Why? Because 3 plus 2 is 5, the number in the middle, and 3 times 2 is 6, the number on the outside. So reverse FOIL, this is x plus 2 times x plus 3. And now you can see the value of reverse FOIL. It's very clear that if x is -2, then -2 plus 2 is 0, and 0 times anything is 0, so that's a solution for x. It's very clear that if x is -3, then -3 plus 3 is 0, 0 times anything is 0, and that's a solution for x. So that's why you got to know your reverse FOIL procedure. It enables you to quickly solve quadratics that would otherwise take some more time to solve. All right, let's take a look at a practice question that involves quadratic equations. What's the sum of the two solutions for x in the quadratic equation blibbity blah? So you see this on your ACT and you're thinking, okay, I got a quadratic equal to 0. I got to whip out my main man here, reverse FOIL. I'm looking for two magic numbers. They should multiply to the number on the outside, which is -56. They should add to the number in the middle, which is +1. Keep those negatives and positives straight as you consider your magic numbers. Now tell me, please, in the chat, what are the two magic numbers here that would get the job done? Yes. So here we want +8 and -7. +8 times -7 is -56. +8 plus -7 is +1, which is 1, the number in the middle that we need. So we're going to reverse FOIL this as x minus 7 times x plus 8 equals 0. And now you can see the solutions for x. 7 minus 7 is 0, so +7 is a possibility. And -8 plus 8 is 0, so -8 is a possibility. Now the test makers ask us to find the sum of the two solutions. So please, if you'd be so kind, tab over to the poll if you haven't already, and submit a vote for the answer choice that actually answers what the ACT is looking for. Notice there are some mistakes that people can make. Choice B for Boris, usually one of my favorite choices on the ACT, this time is B for bogus, because while it is one of the values of x, it is not the sum of the solutions. Same with choice E. 7 is a solution for x, but it's not the sum of the solutions. So neither of those is actually right. The actual answer is -8 plus 7, which is -1. Now that's C for champions, but notice choice D is a very easy to make mistake. If you took 8 plus -7, you'd get 1, and then that's a choice that you would pick, which is wrong. So on the ACT, a lot of times the wrong answer choices will be mistakes that you could make. And that is a good thing. Don't let that make you not like the test. That is a good thing because it means that some people who are not as prepared as you are going to be tempted to pick a choice that isn't the right one. But if you conduct your prep and if you are ready for reverse FOIL and all these other math areas, when you take your exam, you're just going to pick the right answer and you're not going to worry about it. Let's grab C for champions here. Yes, I see a gaining ground in the poll. Awesome. And we can move on with our exam. We're also going to do a quick review of triangles just to give you a little bit of geometry flavor. Triangles are not the only shape that appears on the ACT. We're not even going to review everything about triangles tonight, but just to give you a sense of how we'd go about geometry. Typically what we'll do is we'll review some knowledge that you need to know going into the ACT, like, hey, we know for sure that the ACT will require you to know this knowledge. And then we'll apply that knowledge to a question that assesses that knowledge and also some critical thinking. So we'll review here, for example, that the angles of a triangle always add up to 180. And the area formula of a triangle is area equals 1/2 base times height, where you have to keep in mind that the base and height must be perpendicular. So if you have a right triangle, you can just use the two legs. But if you have a normal triangle with no right angles, you'll have to draw in a height that is perpendicular to the base you choose. So we'll review those facts, and then we'll take a look at a practice question that involves some of those facts. So take a look at this one here. What's the degree measure of the smallest interior angle of triangle DEF below? Okay, so tell me please in the chat, what fact is going to be relevant to you as you try to solve this question on the ACT? Well, here, the area doesn't matter. What matters is that the angles of a triangle add up to 180 degrees. So we're going to take these angles, x plus 2, 4x plus 16, and 2x plus 15, and if we add them up, they should add up to 180. Now, I'm not going to make you do this. I know you know how to do this. I'm 100% confident that every single person locking eyes with me through the camera right now can solve this linear equation for x. It's very elementary. I know you can do it. You'd add up all your like terms. So you'll get at the end of the day, 7x plus 33 equals 180. You would subtract 33 from both sides, and you'd divide by 7. And by the way, no calculator shaming here. So if you want to use your calculator for this step, that's totally fine. I know, of course, you can also do it in your head. You can be like, oh, 7 goes into 14 twice and then into 7 once, so it's 21. That's great. But anytime you feel like you want to use the calculator on this exam, go for it. Don't force yourself to do mental math that you don't feel comfortable with just because the ghost of math teachers past is staring over your shoulder and will cluck disapprovingly if you whip out the infernal device. All right, so here we go. We got x equals 21. Now, are we done here? Are we finished with this question when we have x equals 21? One habit you want to develop before you take the ACT. So this is something you'll be developing in the next 30 days. The vast majority of you are taking your exam on April 8th, which is in about a month. So all the prep that you do in math in that next month, make sure that when you finish a math question, you stop and take a moment to ask yourself, am I done? Because, yeah, 99% of the time, it's fine. You can just circle the choice and move on. But every now and then, you'll get in a situation like this where you're like, okay, am I done x equals 21? And then you'll be like, oh, no. Because the question didn't ask for x. The question asked for the value of the smallest angle. Now, the smallest angle here is x plus 2. Clearly, all the other ones are going to be way, way bigger than that. So we got to add 2 to x and get 23. That's choice B for Boris. Glad one of those finally came up tonight so I can sleep easy this evening. We can grab this choice and we can move on. Now, I know there's a lot of folks right now who are feeling a little bit of the boiling rage floating up within them. You're like, oh, ACT, how do you do this? It's so unfair. Like, oh, that's such a trap. But the thing is, whenever you make a mistake in your practice, whenever you pick a choice like A, for example, don't get angry. Be excited that there are these wrong choices on the test for your competitors, people who are going to be applying to the same colleges you are and will be taking the ACT, trying to do the same thing you're doing. Be excited that there are these wrong answer choices for them to pick because they're not going to be as well prepared as you. They didn't spend a month before their ACT asking themselves after every single math question, am I done? They didn't do it, so they're going to pick choice A. And you're going to pick choice B, and so you're going to get a higher score. You're going to be more likely to get into the colleges that you and your competitors, who are less prepared, both apply to. Tell yourself, it's better to make this mistake now than to make it for the first time on my ACT. So every mistake that you have is a good thing. Just like if you tabbed over to the chat, to the poll, and picked choice A here, that is good news. It's helping you avoid a costly mistake on your exam. All right, guys. Nice work here. I saw a comment from Liz. Boris is making me enjoy math. Yes. All right. Well, that's the idea, right? That's the reason why we created this program is we know that this test is intimidating. We know that each of the 4 sections is intimidating for different folks. So we hope that if we give you great resources, give you great instruction, that you can actually feel positive about the opportunity the ACT presents, which is to get a high score, get into college, and get some really great scholarship money. All right, now let's take a look at the reading test, the 3rd test of the ACT. Now this is one that is, for many folks, a concern because you have only 35 minutes to answer 40 questions. This is another one of those areas where a lot of people get frustrated with the ACT. They're like, oh, I wish I had more time. If only I had more time, I can get all the questions right. But because of this time constraint, I just have so many issues. It's, so unfair. I want to tell you something about how the test is scored, which I hope will lower that blood pressure and help you see this in a little bit of perspective. The ACT is a scaled exam. What that means is that your score depends on how well you do compared to other people who took the same test you did. So think about that for a moment. If you only have 35 minutes to answer these questions, that means everybody has only 35 minutes to answer these questions. Say the test was 10 minutes longer. If you had 10 more minutes to answer these questions, everybody would have 10 more minutes to answer the questions. So what that would mean is everybody would get more questions right. Not just you, but everybody. And if everybody gets more questions right, then nobody's score changes. That's how a scaled test works. You have to do better compared to your competition. Something that would make everybody do better at about the same level isn't going to help you. So don't be mad about the time limit. Instead, be excited that the time limit is going to make it harder for your competitors to get questions right. If you have a really good strategy going into the reading test, you can finish all 40 of these questions in 35 minutes, and that will give you a big competitive advantage compared to someone whose strategy is not as good and who therefore runs out of time. So the next question, of course, is what's the strategy? Now that's something that we, of course, spend a lot of time on in our full course, and we practice it a lot. But tonight I will basically tell you what it is, so you could theoretically start practicing it from here, even if this is all you see. The idea is that when you read a passage, you want to focus on the big picture and not on the details. Most people, when they read, focus on details. Most people try to understand every little last bit. And what happens is you get zoned out, you get frustrated, you have to reread every paragraph 3 times because you just like had that thing where your eyes keep moving, but then you get to the end of the paragraph and you're like, oh, have no idea what I've been reading for the last 45 seconds, and you have to go back and do it all again. So don't focus on the details. Just try to understand the broad direction of the passage, the main idea of the passage. As you get to the later paragraphs, also consider what's the main idea of this paragraph. So if you just focus on the broad direction of the passage and not on all the nitty-gritty details, you can get through the passages a lot more quickly and research the details if you need to. I mean, it is an open book test. The passage is there for you as you answer all the questions. So you don't have to memorize everything. You just need to know where it is. So let's see a passage. And this is, by the way, and this is not like a softball passage by any means. I mean, I hope you believe me when we go through this. That like we're not giving you like an easy peasy passage that's super simple to understand. This is a fairly complicated passage. But what you're going to see is I'm not going to explain any of the science to you. I'm only going to get the broad strokes, and then that's still going to be good enough to get some pretty tough questions right. So let's do it. You start to read on the ACT. In the past, scientific consensus was that the separation of functions within the brain, each hemisphere is responsible for certain tasks, but communicating with each other for others was a uniquely human trait. Okay, now that's a pretty big mouthful of a sentence right off the bat. Tell me please in the chat though, what do you deduce from the phrase, in the past? When a passage starts out with in the past, what are you immediately going to think as a strategic reader? You're going to think it's not that way anymore, right? If I say to you like, in the past, I used to sit around a whole lot, and now I still do. I'm still continuing to do what I did in the past. That would be really weird. It would make no sense. You'd expect something like, in the past, I sat around a whole lot, and now I've become a marathon runner and I go jogging every day. Like, you expect some sort of a difference. So then it says that something was a uniquely human trait. So you're thinking, okay, so in the past, scientists thought that blah, blah, blue, whatever, was uniquely human. Which means maybe it's not anymore. Maybe scientists don't think that something is a uniquely human trait anymore, and actually other animals have it. So now we keep on reading. About 90% of all humans are right-handed, implying that the dominant hemisphere for most humans' motor functions is the left side. Researchers have observed this tendency at all stages of life, even prior to birth. Clearly, there is some kind of genetic predisposition involving the separation of the hemispheres of the brain. One may ask whether this separation is found similarly in all animals. So, our topic here seems to be handedness, basically preferring one hand over the other. That's just the broad subject of the passage. I don't care about the details with the brain hemispheres, any of that stuff. I just want to know, like, what's this passage about? And then the question is, do animals have it? So do animals also have handedness? And tell me in the chat, what's your guess? Do you think that animals also have handedness before you even read the next paragraph of this passage? Excellent. I see Karina and Magic DeVille. You guys are picking up on this strategy. Awesome. So we're guessing, for this one, yeah, probably we're going to see that animals also have handedness just like humans do. So let's take a look at the next paragraph. The evidence that a left-brained, right-handed preference for everyday activities occurs in nearly all vertebrates is mounting, and substantiates the notion of a genetic component to the differentiation of the brain hemispheres. A lot of your competition on test day is going to be like, what the heck just happened, and why is it happening to me? Could this please have just happened to someone else? What on earth is this sentence saying? But as a strategic reader, you can tell that basically all this is saying is like, yeah, whatever that thing was that people used to think was unique to humans, animals have it too. So we're going to make a note like yes, because our previous note was animals question mark, and now we're saying yes, animals do have this stuff. Now tell me please in the chat, what do you now infer when you see the word however at the beginning of the next sentence? While you guys answer that question, I gotta give a shout out to Stunt on Fools here saying Boris needs to run for president in 2020. I totally would run for president. The problem is I'm not a natural born US citizen. I was born in Tallinn, Estonia in 1985, and I moved to America when I was 6 years old, so I'm a citizen, but not a natural born citizen. And unfortunately, guys, that is why we're never gonna have hashtag Boris for president. It's just not, it's out of my hands, guys. It's out of my hands. Now, as we can tell here, however is a contrasting word. So it seems like we had everything wrapped up, right? Humans had this thing, animals have this thing. Oh, now there's going to be some sort of a deepening to the mystery. So now we see, well, okay, well, what is that deepening of the mystery? No animal has shown as extreme a preference as humans. Okay, so that's the main idea of the passage then. That humans had this thing, animals have it too, but humans are more extreme in how they have it. So I'll make a quick note here, like humans extreme. Notice I'm not even really writing the topic or summarizing any of the actual science. I'm just getting the broad direction of the passage. If there comes along a question that really requires me to dig into these details and probe the passage for facts, then by all means I'll do it then, because there is a reward for getting that information. I'll get a question right. But if there's never a question that asks about these details, then thank goodness I didn't waste any of my time or my mental energy trying to understand facts that don't matter. There's a great question, by the way, from Heaven, who I know that this has been answered already in the chat, but it's such a good question. I want to make sure everyone can hear the answer here. Will we be able to underline stuff in the passage? Yes. The test booklet is yours to do with as you wish. It will be submitted, but nothing that you write in it will be considered. So you can draw pictures. I mean, not that we recommend it, but you could do anything you want in there. And if it helps you get a higher score, do it. Then it says this disparity is probably due to a combination of factors. Most likely the use of tools and the continued reliance on fine motor skills for everyday tasks of humans forced the right-handed preference to become increasingly favored. Genetics may have started humans on the path, but other factors must have been important. Okay, so why are humans extreme? Genetics doesn't tell the whole story. So there are, many factors. There's many reasons why humans have this extreme preference for right-handedness. Okay, and I want to make a quick note here that the notes that I take in the margins, these are not carved into stone by thunderbolts from the heavens. I saw a great paraphrase here in the chat from Sebastian. In humans, it's more obvious. Yeah, that would be work as well. Like humans, more obvious. Perfectly fine. You have to write notes in a way that works for you. And the goal when you take notes is not to summarize all the facts. Don't write down notes like you're making a study guide for yourself. Write notes as if you just want to make a quick annotation of where certain type of information was located in the passage, so that through your annotations you can find things quickly if you need to. Okay, so let's see how this quick reading of the passage, without delving into any of the details, helps us confidently answer some questions. So number one, the main point of the passage is. Okay, well, we already know what the main point of the passage is. We basically said it while we read the passage. That's one of the nice things about following the strategy of focusing on the big picture and not getting lost in details, is you'll already know the main point of the passage before you even get to the question that asks you for it. Please tab over to the poll and vote for the answer choice that you think captures the main point of the passage that we just read. So here we have to call on the fact that the passage said genetics wasn't the whole story. there were other factors besides genetics that explain why humans have this extreme preference for certain hemispheres of the brain. So when choice B says that they have a complex origin, or that it has a complex origin, having a complex origin is another way of saying there are many factors that are involved. So we can grab choice B for Boris one more time, circle it, and of course move on with the ACT. Here's another question that, again, we can answer fairly quickly if we have a good strategy as we read the passage. It can be inferred from the passage that no species has ever displayed. Now this one's a little bit trickier because of course it says something has never happened. So we can't predict what has never happened. We can't be like, oh, no species ever displayed a whole lot of things. No species has ever displayed horns that are always on fire. I mean, there's plenty of things. So for this one, unlike for the last one, I don't know exactly what I'm looking for, but I'll be able to very quickly research the answer choices. A has a preference for left-handedness. All right, so let's take a look back at some of these paragraphs in the passage. Tell me please in the chat, does it say anything here that there has never been a species, ever, that has a preference for left-handedness? Okay, so what we see at the top of this paragraph is nearly all vertebrates. Left brain, right-handed preference for everyday activities occurs in nearly all vertebrates. Now that doesn't mean all, so it seems like there's at least some vertebrates that don't have a right-handed preference. So maybe there are some that do have a left-handed preference. So if anything, the passage seems to disprove choice A, which says that a preference for left-handedness has never happened. We're going to cross it out. Next up is choice B, a 95% preference for right-handedness. Well, tell me please in the chat, what is the percentage for humans for right-handedness? For humans, in the fifth line, we see that it's about 90%. And if you forgot that, who cares, right? It doesn't matter if you remembered that when you first read the passage. You don't need to remember these types of details. Now there's a question about it, so now you'll look it up and say, okay, about 90% of humans. Now, humans are the most extreme. No other animal is as extreme as humans. So if 90% is as extreme as it gets, is there ever going to be a 95% preference for right-handedness? No, it seems like there's never going to be, because if humans have 90 and humans are the most extreme, then nothing's ever going to be above 90. So we can actually circle choice B because that is pretty rock solid and move on with the ACT. Do this in your practice. When you think a choice is correct in reading, pick it and move on. Don't even read the choices that come after it. Then when you review the question, review those choices, make sure you understand why they're wrong, or if you made a mistake, understand why you made the mistake. On the ACT reading test, timing is tight. So if you're someone who wishes you had more time, you can actually get more time that your competition doesn't get. Because your competition's always going to read A, B, C, and D no matter what happens. But if you only read A, B, stop at B because B is correct, you have extra time that nobody else in the testing room does. And that will give you an advantage on this exam. All right, now reading is tough. I'm not going to lie. Reading is a very tough test. Definitely it takes a lot of practice to get the hang of this strategy, and we do tons of that practice throughout our reading sessions in the Online Prep Live program. Now, I hope though, even though this isn't maybe a moment where you're already a master of the strategy, that you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, that you can see what it is that you'll need to practice, what avenue you'll need to go down to eventually get good enough at reading that you can finish the whole test, answer all the questions, and get through the passages. All right, folks. Nice work there in reading. Let's take a look at our last test in ACT, which is the science test. Now, the science test is definitely a little bit of a bizarre test because tell me please in the chat, what percentage of the questions require a knowledge of outside scientific information? It's kind of interesting. If you've taken these practice tests before, if you've seen the ACT before, you know that it's close to 0%. Maybe a handful of questions, like no more than 3, require outside science knowledge. And even then, it's very, very basic, like knowing that a pH below 7 is acidic, like really, really basic stuff that just about everybody knows. For the most part, this is a test of scientific reasoning, not a test of scientific knowledge. It's almost like a continuation of the reading test, but with an emphasis on reasoning over, just literary comprehension. So that can be a good thing if you're someone who doesn't like science. I'm going to be honest, science was always my worst subject in high school. It was my worst subject in college. And I had no trouble with the ACT science test because my scientific ignorance did not hurt me here. However, if you're someone who's a huge fan of science class, if it's like your favorite class, and you're not as strong on the verbal side of things, it can be a little bit frustrating initially to approach this test and realize that all that awesome science that you know, your mastery of p orbitals and stoichiometry and everything is not actually going to help you at all when you take the exam. So that's an important thing to be prepared for. This does require its own unique practice. Now, when you do scientific reasoning, there are some concepts that you technically don't have to study before you take the science test, but if you know them going in, it definitely makes your life a lot easier. And we'll review, of course, as always, all of them throughout our online prep live course, but to see a sample of what we teach you tonight, we'll just discuss interpretation of data, which is about 45 to 55% of the science test. So for our sample class this evening, we picked the single highest yield area of scientific reasoning that is assessed on the exam. In order to interpret data, there are three things that you need to look for: variables, units, and trends. Now tell me please in the chat, what is the independent variable in a scientific experiment? Deadly Dingus says, by the way, I love these names, guys. Boris, you deserve an award. All in favor for the Nobel. I think I can actually win the Nobel Prize. I am not disqualified for that, for having been born in the Soviet Union. So that is a great suggestion, Deadly Dingus. I will definitely follow up on that. Now, the independent variable of an experiment, that is the variable that the scientists directly control, and it is usually on the x-axis. That leaves the y-axis to be the dependent variable, and the dependent variable is what the scientists measure. And of course, there are also the controls in an experiment. So everything besides the independent variables needs to be heavily controlled. Sorry, independent variable singular needs to be controlled so that you can guarantee that if there was some kind of a trend, it was because of changes to the independent variable and not something else. For example, if I'm doing an experiment to see which kind of soil makes plants grow better, but one of the plants, in addition to having different soil, also gets more sunlight and more water than the other plants do, and if that plant ends up having better growth, I don't know if it was because of the soil or because it had more water and more sunlight. So if I'm doing some kind of an experiment like that, I need to make sure that all the plants have the same water levels, all the plants had the same amount of light. Now, the next thing to look at when you have data in a science passage on the ACT is the units. So units tell you, what's the measure? Is it centimeters, meters, liters, nanoliters, whatever? But there's a deeper element to this as well that I want to alert you to this evening, and that is the scale. So to look at the scale, you'll look at the tick marks. And you'll ask yourself, how big of a jump does each tick mark represent? Sometimes there will be wrong answers that are very tempting if you don't consider the units or you don't consider the size of the intervals between the tick marks. And finally, there's the trend. Now, the trend is just a fancy word for a pattern. So basically, what is the relationship between the variables? Does one go up as the other go up? Does one go down as the other goes up? Or heck, is there no relationship? These things seem totally unrelated. So any of those things could be a possibility, and you want to take a moment to ask yourself that on the exam. A lot of your competition, a lot of people when they first see the ACT science exam will spend like some indeterminate amount of time looking at the data like, oh, when x is 15, y is 25.6. Interesting, very interesting. And when x is 20, y is 37.4. Did not know that before. Don't do that. Don't look at the data. Don't look at it that way. Have a very targeted ninja approach to examining the figure. Ask yourself, what are the variables? What are the units? And what are the trends, if any? Get that and move on to the questions. So let me show you how that actually works to help you do better on the science test. Here you go. You get a big old honking thing. You get a big block of text in the paragraph. Don't worry about it. You look at your figure. And so tell me please in the chat, what is the independent variable in this experiment? You look to the x-axis for the independent variable, and that in this case is temperature. Now the units here are degrees Celsius, and the intervals is that between every 2 tick marks, 20 degrees Celsius go by. That leaves the dependent variable to be solubility, and that is grams of solute per 100 grams of water. So that means that when you see a number like 40, that's 40 grams per 100 grams of water. And each tick mark is 40 in this case. Now tell me please in the chat, how would you describe the relationship between these two variables, the temperature and the solubility? So here we have a slightly complicated picture. For the majority of things, as the temperature goes up, solubility goes up as well. But that is not always the case. There are a couple here that are exceptions. The Ce2SO4 down here and the Na2SO4. Those actually go down in solubility as the temperature increases. So most of the time it's a direct relationship. As temp goes up, solubility goes up. But every now and then there's actually an inverse or a negative relationship. As temperature goes up, solubility goes down. Okay, so that's it. Don't waste time like looking at the actual values and trying to remember these numbers. Just say, okay, I know my variables, I know my units, and I know the trends. For the most part. Let's take a look at a practice question and get a reward for our time. Approximately how many grams of blah could be dissolved in 25 grams of water at 90 degrees Celsius? Okay, tell me please in the chat, what is the sort of red flag in this question that you just know some people on the ACT are going to miss, and because of that get the question wrong? As strategic test takers, we paid diligent attention to the variables, the units, and the trends. And we know that the units for solubility are grams per 100 grams of water. So as soon as you see that this is 25 grams, you're thinking, oh, okay. So there's probably going to be one answer here that would be the correct answer if it was per 100 grams of water. I'm going to need to make sure that I divide that answer by 4 to get it down to 25 grams of water. Why by 4? Well, because 100 divided by 25 is 4. Okay, well, let's proceed. So we're looking at NaNO3. What is NaNO3? Don't know, don't care. Doesn't matter. So we just care that nano the third, whatever that is that line right there. And we got to figure out where it intersects at 90 degrees Celsius. So you'll be doing a lot of this on the ACT. We're going to cross-reference the nano 3 line at 90 degrees Celsius. You can use your test grid as a straight edge to help you draw a straight line as you go up. And then you don't even need to draw a line over because that actually hits one of the lines. It is 160. But remember, 160 is not the answer because of the units. So please, if you'd be so kind, folks, vote in the poll for the answer choice that you would pick on test day because it does correctly account for the units in the question. And I see a lot of you did pick choice D here when you tabbed over to the poll, and that's okay. D is the wrong answer, but good that you made that mistake now instead of making it on the ACT. That's our main goal, honestly, in Online Prep Live, is we want you to come to class and make a boatload of mistakes. Because if you're making a mistake, that means you're going to make it at some point. The only thing that can change is, do you make it in practice where you learn from it, or do you make it for the very first time in your life on the ACT exam? You don't want to make it for the first time in your life on the ACT exam, so make it in practice. Make it happily. Be enthusiastic about what you've learned that will help you avoid mistakes in the future, and then get that point when it comes up to test time. Remember, the units for our variable, our dependent variable, are grams of solute per 100 grams of water. But the question is asking us to dissolve in only 25 grams of water. Well, if we only have 25 grams of water, If we only have a quarter as much water, then we're only going to get a quarter as much solute. So instead of 160 grams, we'll have a quarter of 160, which is 40. Couldn't have planned it any better myself. We're going to round out our problems this evening with, in my humble opinion, the greatest ACT answer choice of all time, choice B for Boris. Grab that choice on the ACT, confirm it, and of course move on with the exam. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this session. I saw a lot of you did. A lot of folks were writing very nice things in the chat, so we really appreciate your kind words. And most of all, we thank you for coming out tonight and for giving us some of your time so that you could, take control of your ACT and do a really good job on this exam. Preparation makes such a huge difference. By coming here tonight, you've also seen what the online Prep Live course is like. And it's a really great course. So if you have a moment to spare, I won't go too much longer beyond our ending time of quarter after the hour, but I do just want to give you a few bits of information about how to enroll, what the pricing is, what's included, and all that stuff. So when you enroll in the course, you don't just get the classes, but you also get a lot of practice material. So the ACT has contributed, a lot of practice questions, 2 full tests, a lot of short diagnostic tests for each of the different sections, and a bunch of flashcards to study from. So there's a lot of great resources that you get in addition to these live sessions with, the teachers like me to help you prepare for the ACT outside of the class sessions as well as during the class sessions. That said, there are a lot of class sessions. And one thing I personally like about the program is that, there are 28 hours of live instruction with teachers, and you don't have to take them in any special order. So you can attend the sessions in whatever order that you want to. You can do geometry before algebra or algebra first, and then do some English, and then go back to geometry. So we just have the sessions running in a sort of loose cycle in the interval of a few weeks, and you can just come and enjoy any session that you want whenever you want. So you don't have to necessarily fit everything into a really confined schedule and change your life around the class. If there is a session that you can't make that you really wanted to make, they're all recorded and you can watch them in the Online Prep Live homepage later on, those recordings. So it's a really flexible, really convenient class because you have all the resources to study from outside of class. You're told what to do in between sessions or what the homework is for each session. You can attend the sessions in whatever order that you want to. And if you can't make one that you want to attend, you can watch the recording of it later and get that material made up. So how do you enroll? You enroll in a couple different ways. So when you're signing up for the ACT, you can enroll for the program then. If you are already registered for the ACT, you can go back to your ACT homepage and you can sign up for Online Prep Live through the ACT website without having to register for a new test. If you are someone who's already purchased ACT Online Prep, you can upgrade to this Online Prep Live, again, right from your ACT Online Prep homepage or the ACT Online Prep app. So you can upgrade or you can enroll in the course in a variety of ways, depending on whether you've signed up for the test, have signed up for the test, or are doing ACT Online Prep. And finally, you might be wondering about the pricing. And the way it works is it is a subscription. So basically, you enroll in the class, and that gives you, for a certain span of time, the ability to attend as many class sessions as you want to. You can even attend the same one more than once if you feel like it. Most of you guys are doing this taking your ACT on April 8th. So if you're going to be prepping for that, then you'll want the 6-week subscription because that will give you time to prep all the way up to your exam. And a couple of weeks after that, if you think you might want to retake the ACT, you can keep on attending the sessions. For those of you who are testing later, you can get either a 12-week subscription or a 24-week subscription. And for coming to this event tonight, you can use our super secret code EVENT to get a 20% discount, which of course does change the final price. And you can see that compared to like typical prep programs, this is very affordable. So that's one of the things that makes me really excited as a Kaplan teacher to work with the ACT is that it allows us to give preparation to students who might otherwise have had a hard time affording a prep class. Now, still, we know this is not within the reach of everybody. So one of the things that ACT has done, which I think is amazing, is that if you are someone who has a fee waiver, the class is totally free. And that just blows my mind. So I'm going to say it again. If you are getting a fee waiver to take the ACT, you get Online Prep Live for free. Not like a half version, but all the version with all the live instruction, all the teachers, all the practice materials, everything is totally free. And several 100,000 people get fee waivers every year, so I don't know why we don't have several 100,000 students in the program, because it's a really great, like, full prep live instruction program. Please, if you have a fee waiver for the ACT, sign up for Online Prep Live. It literally costs nothing, and you get professional help, from professional ACT instructors to help you get the best score possible on your exam. So definitely do that if you are getting a fee waiver, because it is such a great deal. All right, guys, I'll leave the screen here with the pricing options, and of course the website is the test maker's website here. So onlineprep.act.org/login, or just onlineprep.act.org. And again, you can see the prices here with the codes that you can use to get a 20% discount. So thank you guys again so much for coming, and thank you also for staying a few minutes late and giving us a few extra minutes of your time for those technical difficulties that we had earlier this evening, starting a little bit later. Let me just say thank you so much for coming tonight, for taking charge of your ACT preparation. I know we do have some adults in the audience, some guidance counselors, some moms, some dads who are here, so thank you so much for checking us out, and we hope that you liked what you saw. However you prep for the ACT, we wish you all the best of luck in your preparation and, of course, on test day. Thank you guys once again so much for coming this evening. From ACT Prep Online Prep Live with the ACT and Kaplan, my name is Boris, and we are signing out. Have a great night, everybody.